Hello, everyone. Hello, and welcome to Epic Loot Radio. My name is Brian, and joining me in the co-host chair, Kirk the Gamer from What's New Video Games. We're back after having a nice little holiday break. We've been running this podcast. The goal is every other week here on Mondays. And today we got a lot of video game news, reviews, and so much more to discuss. I know Kirk and I have been playing a lot of the same games you've been stepping into, and I think that's probably the best way to start off today's podcast with both reintroduce yourself, because this is our second episode of us teaming up, and then let's talk about some Lies of P, man.
Oh yeah, we're gonna get straight into that. Nice.
Right into it.
Well, yeah, I'm Kirk. I run a channel called What's New Video Games, which is basically focused on like covering games like as a small media outlet. So I've done some reviews here and there. I did a review on the Crew Motorfest that kind of blew up, and I did a review that was kind of like a weird work to game partnership, I guess, for a new JRPG, Eternites, that just came out, which may not be what you're expecting. So yeah, Brian's sort of bringing me into the fold a little bit, he gradually. He's trying to test my mettle a little bit, but yeah, got some stuff going on there, and then we have the Twitch channel as well, which primarily I've been doing Marvel Snap up to this point, but we've got the first Descendant coming out this week, beta. And I know that the audience here for Work to Game and over on Ginger Prime, big into those sort of MMOs and MMO light type games. So that might be one to pay attention to. We'll see. Yeah.
First Descendant, let's just actually, I know he said Lies of P, but like you brought up First Descendant, I think that's actually a really good discussion because they're opening up their crossplay beta test.
I don't know why they're calling it that. Like, just call it a why is it called the crossplay beta?
They had an actual beta. So one of the things that frustrates me about gaming, is that when you see a marketing push called a beta, because development wise, it's like, no. There's still like a beta is about gathering information and making changes. And the First Descendant did a beta last fall. And a lot of the feedback came in like, hey, it's lacking this, it's lacking that. And then they went silent. And here they are a year later, now with a crossplay beta and no yet release date, which I would assume that we're going to be looking at 2024 for this game's official release, unless I missed an announcement.
They have claimed this year.
Ooh.
It's been one of those open-ended things where
it's September.
It's like semi non-committal, it would, like, they put themselves in a position where it would be very easy for them to be like, actually it got pushed out of this year, guys. Yeah. All their marketing and stuff has been like later this year, but very, very vague in terms of like when it's actually going to come out. So
that makes me nervous because no matter what, launching a new game, new IP in the like window of what is to come this year alone,
I think if they can make December, it would be very good for them.
December's still a tough month of release, like from a support perspective. But you're right, like if
you're right,
if they can have nothing else that's really like taking anybody's attention, it could end up.
Well, they're also in South Korea, so I don't. I have no idea what the demographic of like observant Christians, that would be practicing, Christmas there.
Small Christmas, like all right.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I have no idea. It could be a giant metric of the population. I am genuinely ignorant about that, but I think December would be a good window for them, especially with we got some release dates for like January, February this past week that are like some solid bangers, including Final Fantasy.
Rebirth.
Yeah, they need to get that game out in like early December, compete against Frontiers of Pandora, and that's about it.
Because that's an excellent point. Because like December's maybe your window, or like March or April. Like, because
they want to get as much of a time slot as possible. So if they can get it like early December, get all of December, all of January, and then by then, like, people are either like, okay, I came, I saw, I experienced everything with this game that I wanted to experience, or they're like, oh my god, this game is my life, I'm going to play this for the next 6 to 8 months, maybe beyond that. You're going to have two types of people there, and then obviously the people that bounced off it initially, but they need to have that sort of window to claim a slice of the sphere. Otherwise, it just in an oversaturated market with all these free to play games, it's just not going to be able to stick the landing. So
Yeah.
they got to be observant of that for sure. I mean, you see, take a game like Immortals of Avrium that we talked about last time.
They already laying people off from the
yeah,
studio. Yeah.
and that's like, and actually, like, that's a good game. Like, that might be the best first person shooter of the year, not counting Cyberpunk. Because Starfield, I would say, does other things better than its first person shooter mechanics.
Yeah.
Immortals of Avium might be the best first person shooter of the year. The main competition is going to be Call of Duty, obviously. But like, and then that game is just like a commercial flop, basically. I mean, that's nuts. So it really, really matters the timing. But in terms of the game, like I mean, we're talking about it from in terms of like its commercial success,
Right.
At a higher level, as you like to say. In terms of the game itself, I have no idea what this is going to be like. Full disclosure, I did get accepted into their content creator program, which is like kind of a big first step for me. Although I'm not really sure what that like constitutes exactly. There's apparently going to be like some exclusive Twitch drops, so twitch.tv/Kurt the Gamer, come on over to get like some free currency, or you could probably get like $5 worth of like real money, in-game money.
Huge for content creators. It's huge. I cannot, like, if you're, that's where Twitch will continue to be a big draw for a lot of people, because they have the drops system, and YouTube, like I like streaming on YouTube. It feels way more relaxed, but like right now, I know
it doesn't bring eyes. It doesn't bring the eyes to the game. As far as streaming,
it's harder to find the live streams. It's hard, like, so it's like basically if you're already an established content creator, YouTube can end up working, which it does for me. But it's like getting established, getting started. It's like discovery. You have to go up with a VOD. You got to be like, you got to be making reviews. You got to do you got to do the work in order to build.
I've been working my butt off, man. Dude. It's been paid off recently.
Your reviews and your videos are such like really good quality. So guys, if you're not following Kirk, we'll be sure have all the links and stuff after the show's done, so that you guys can go check them out.
enough self promo though. Let's talk about the game. Actually, I'm so sorry, guys, but like this game, I was gonna say, full disclosure, I'm in the program. I don't actually know what that means for me, and also I think just in general, you were talking about like with the second beta now. I think that their marketing and their messaging has been like kind of off and awkward. I think that there might be a little bit of a cultural discrepancy there in terms of them being a South Korean studio and publisher. I know in the Xbox showcase, like, very interesting thing was like they only had subtitles. I think that sort of comes off a little bit more rigid, like when you don't have like a lot of presentations, you'll have like the person like narrating over them, like the Nintendo Direct, for instance. You've got the executives for Nintendo talking in Japanese, and then you have like the narrator that's much higher volume, that's like, let's look at the next what's next from the Peach Showtime game or whatever, and like that comes off a little more colloquial, like for other audiences and stuff. This has come off kind of like they just kind of are doing what they're doing, and like even like me being in the creator program, I'm like, okay, so like what exactly is going on with this game? I'm not really sure. Like it looks like it is gonna be sort of like it could be anywhere from like Anthem and like Phantasy Star Online to like more like a Warframe, or like even more like an Outriders. Like I'm not really sure. Right. So I'm excited to like dive in, and you guys all can as well tomorrow. You definitely don't have to watch me on Twitch.
Third person shooter.
Dive in and play it.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know if it's gonna be like just looter shooter, or if it's gonna be like hardcore like MMO on console type game. Like I don't know. There's a range of potentials here for this game, and the people who have played it say it's actually quite good.
Yeah, that was all the praise last year. Like last year was like, okay, they've nailed this, and that's actually, you brought up Anthem. Like Anthem nailed two things, and then it was the rest of everything was just like garbage. And so like if Descendant can deliver on, like, because you got to have a good, fun gameplay loop. That's one thing. Bungie, no matter how frustrated everybody will get at Destiny, like the gameplay loop, when you step in and shoot that gun, all of a sudden you're re-addicted very easily. It's like, this feels good to play. So first Descendant can knock that, and then also not have a lot of problems. But again, you brought up South Korea. You brought up a lot of things that are like, guys, wait for reviews. Like, there's not gonna, you can get tested out. You can test.
Well, don't dive in tomorrow. Just play it. I mean, that's the good thing about it would be
that cheddar.
Well, but there is none. That's the thing with this one. There's no buy-in. which is really nice, right? Because
Right.
like with Anthem, you got to drop your $60.
Right.
With the
Now it would be
Division, which
70, yeah.
arguably was pretty good, you got to drop your $60. Like, like so. And another kind of cool thing is like we haven't had one of these in a while.
Yeah.
Like we had too many of them and they were all like bad. Like
Yeah.
Avengers.
Oh,
I
dude.
actually really like Avengers. Speaking
I like
speaking
the
of,
first
Avengers
person
is super
story,
duper.
you know.
Yeah. Avengers is super duper on sale right now, and it gets delisted on the 30th. So you
It's
might want
outta
to go pick
here.
that up for pennies.
Ugh.
Because you do get to be Iron Man and stuff, so like that's kind of cool. But yeah, they should have never made that game like a Destiny like or whatever. But every game had to be a Destiny like for like a window of like 3 years, right? And then everybody was sort of like, okay, we give up because like
Right.
nobody can actually do this well. I think Anthem was like the last straw where people were like, oh, like BioWare can like take an at bat at this and completely strike out. Never mind, we don't want to try to do this.
Yeah.
So we haven't had one of these for a while now. Like I would say probably like a year and a half to 2 years.
Been a
So
while.
like in comes
while.
a new challenger. Like let's see if they if it's worth its salt at all or if it just completely flops. I think it's more likely that it's either like in the Outriders or Warframe territory, which I'm not comparing those two things. Those are completely two different types of games, but they're just a little bit smaller in scale of like what each one of those is like trying to do. Like Outriders is like a smaller Borderlands,
Yeah,
and Warframe is like a smaller Destiny.
And Outlanders, Outriders is also more. It's more like it's not trying to be this online games as a service. That's what they've kind of hit it at. And
They said that, but then they had like DLC and like.
They had an expansion, and it's like I was like, are we going to see like a yearly expansion? And like the end of the day, from just a networking, I kind of wish it was like, man, I wish we had more like drop in, drop out multiplayer. I wish that it were like, well, what would this look like if they decided to go with that like shared world shooter, always online approach? And I was like, I wonder if this is just kind of like establishing an IP before they decide to take that next logical step. Because from a third person shooter perspective, I'd love it if Gears of War decided to go that route. Now we have Gears 5 and rumored Gears 6 coming out at some point, and it's like, give me a reason like I can be in this world, because I really have always enjoyed the Gear series, and especially when you're like, when you play a third person shooter, like that does, I think, feel really like solid to this day. But
the risk there is like, does that if Gears does it, does that end up feeling like the next Monster Hunter World, but it's Gears and it's awesome, or does it end up feeling like something Fallout 76
where it's just not living up?
You're just like, oh god, why did you make this type of game? This is terrible.
Right. Yeah. And then it's like, we'll fix it. And then 2 years later, they come out with 2.0, which I think is a perfect way for us to, kind of tease what we're going to be talking about on today's show. We're going to be talking about Cyberpunk 2.0, but also as it relates to Starfield, because
I want to talk about so much Starfield, man.
We're going to be talking about Starfield here. So that's going to be overall the idea for the show. I see a lot of people coming in. Thank you guys so much for being here. We are live on YouTube, Twitch, and on Twitter. So you guys, and I saw Alex, aka Mystera, jump over here from Twitter. So that's great. That the reason why we go live on that, so that people can say, hey, maybe I'll come watch the show on a different platform, because you can't chat with us live on Twitter, but we can highlight some things like this over here on the live show. But now let's so overall, like you guys know, for this podcast, we're gonna be talking about Cyberpunk, Starfield, but you've also been playing Lies of P, and I think that's a really good thing to talk about before we get into the core of today's podcast. So what is your overall impressions? How much time have you put into this game? And is it something that I should set down the games that I'm playing to pick up right away, or is this something I can wait on?
Well, the question is how much of a From Software fan are you?
I really have. I've only started getting into From Software games with Elden Ring, and I still haven't actually finished Elden Ring, but I was really impressed by it. It kind of made me feel like, man, I remember this as, it felt like I was a kid again. Mega Man, lots of difficulty, kind of learning by failing kind of mindset. And then as you start to learn systems and more, you're like, oh, okay, I'm starting to like it. I feel like you build a natural skill when playing Elden Ring. So I with that, I was like, I need to be checking out more From Software games, but Elden Ring was my first From Software game that I've ever played.
And there's probably a lot of people that are just like you in that regard, because it got such a huge marketing push and it had so much commercial success. I think that for someone like you, I would recommend going and checking out Bloodborne, which you see behind me, going and checking out Dark Souls 3, figuring out, because Elden Ring is like its own type of deal. Like they made a game rather successfully
Hmm.
that would appeal to a lot of people, and someone like yourself that likes a Final Fantasy 14, that likes broad open expanses, that likes sort of delving into the idea of a vast open universe that you can explore. Their previous games are not like that.
Hmm.
They're not like that at all. They're very much like Metroidvanias. If you played like the Star Wars Jedi games, those games borrow a lot from Software games, and it's very much like, 3 steps forward, 1.5 steps back type progression.
Hmm.
And so it's definitely an acquired taste. Sekiro won Game of the Year at Jeff Keighley's Game Awards the year that
Hmm.
game came out. So these games have, as I'm sure you well know, like a rabid, vehemently supportive fan base. The people that love these games love them so
Yeah.
much. Sort of like, people that love Final Fantasy. It's similar to that.
Yeah.
But it goes to the developer more than the franchises itself. Like, it's from software more than it is Final Fantasy, in a way that like Square doesn't really have, because Square, there's so much disparity in terms of the
Excellent point.
offerings that Square
Yeah.
has, right? Like, From Software is, and the Armored Core is sort of the recent departure from that, where people are like, if you like Souls games, or you like Elden Ring, like, you might not like Armored Core. Like, Armored Core is an Armored Core game, and that's a specific thing, and you might want to do your research. But otherwise, it's like that they have delivered a certain specific type of product over the last, almost 10 years now, that it's like you're getting this particular type of game, and it's going to be, the attention to detail is going to be top tier, and it's going to be awesome.
Hmm.
And Elden Ring is that made to have massive appeal,
Yeah.
and that made to compete with the likes of The Witcher and Skyrim, and gosh, I don't even know. But to appeal to the average gamer that's like, oh, I like the idea of just like, I can look in the distance and be like, I want to go there. That looks awesome on the horizon, that sort of thing. The traditional From Software game is very much down to the gameplay mechanics and the viscerally just chef kiss type of combat mechanics. And so for someone like you, I'd recommend like go check out a Bloodborne,
Hmm.
because if you do, and if you fall in love with Bloodborne for what it is, it's gonna feel reductive after Elden Ring, but you may be like, oh, this is a very bespoke type of offering compared to Elden Ring. Elden Ring is just like, here's the kitchen sink, here's all of it, just
Yeah.
do everything. And this is very much like, we're telling you a story, like it's set in a very particular period, like this Victorian era. It's Lovecraftian horror. It's oozing an atmosphere. It's very tight. It's very tight and narrow in terms of its vision, in a way that just it hits you upside the head with just like how strong and evocative, and the level of attentiveness that was put into creating like this almost art.
Hmm.
And what the studio Round 8 has been able to do, like, I literally feel like I'm playing Bloodborne 2. Like, I would have to remind myself that, like, oh, this game is not the sequel to Bloodborne. Like, oh, this game is not made by From
Okay.
Software.
All
I
right.
mean, like, down to the font, down to the cutscene direction. I'm not kidding. Like, this is like the exemplified of, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery to the 11th degree. There might would be like a lawsuit potential here if the game like wasn't so good. I mean, this is like, if people, because I know not a lot of people have jumped in on this, because I bought the 3 days early edition or whatever, the deluxe edition. If people are like avid fans of Bloodborne, like this is it, baby.
Yeah.
Like, this is awesome. This, if
They
you
just
wanted
added
a,
it to Game Pass, right?
right, yes. If it that will be available, I think it might be available today. It's either today or tomorrow. Might be
Hmm.
available today, actually. So go check that out. But if you are a fan of Bloodborne, this, and you wanted like a PS5 version, or you're like, oh, when's Bloodborne 2 coming out? I mean, this game is like, there are very few things that I could find wrong with it in terms of, this doesn't feel like Bloodborne. This doesn't feel like, the thing it's imitating. It's like, no, man. Like, they are killing it. They are nailing this thing. I know I'm like not getting into specifics, and it's like hard for me to, but everything
Yeah.
down to the way it feels like when you make contact with like enemies with your weapon, like the slash, that everything from the sound design to the movement animations of your character, the sound of footsteps as you're walking, the running animations. I mean, everything is like meticulously crafted to evoke sort of a Bloodborne or Dark Souls type of feeling. I mean,
Mhm.
this is like I mean, this is obsessive almost on the part of this studio in terms of, yeah, I think it's hard to like fault them.
Yeah.
Like the degree to which they, I mean, this would be like if somebody like meticulously recreated like a Michelangelo or something. You know, it's like there's a level of artistry to that in being able to recreate something so beautiful, you know, down to the finite details. It's hard to say, oh, well, they just ripped it off. It's like, no, they understood so comprehensively what makes the source material great and what they're trying to emulate and why. Like there's clearly an appreciation for that medium embedded in this that is, you know, it's not like, oh, we wanted to make our own version of this so we could make a bunch of money, you know,
Yeah.
so we just decided to make our own Bloodborne. It's like you can clearly see like we love Bloodborne. We love From Software, and we wanted to create our own version of that. And here it is. We hope that you enjoy it as much as you enjoyed, you know, that game and the previous From Software games. And everything I've seen from like review outlets, from Game Informer to IGN to Kind of Funny, everybody's like, dude, this game slaps, man. This game is like top 5 of the year. I mean, and this is like after
What a
Baldur's Gate
year.
3 came
Right.
out. This is,
What a
and
year.
people are like, dude, I did not think, like, they're like, this is basically a From Software game. Like, I didn't think that this was gonna occupy my headspace in terms of like what games I was thinking about at the end of the year, of like who brought their blank, you know, who brought it home, baby. And like this game is like, it's up there. It's just like, no, man, you can't ignore me. I came to play. Get out, you know, get out of the way, Baldur's Gate 3. I understand you're the Titan juggernaut at this point. Get out of the way, Starfield. Like, I'm gonna be in that conversation. I would be shocked. I mean, I would be a mouth on the floor if this doesn't get a Game of the Year nomination at all. I
And
would
this
be
year
like,
is
dude,
going
you
to
done
be
them dirty.
fierce
This,
competition.
but this game, I mean, I blew $70 on this game to get, you know, the super deluxe, whatever, all the cosmetics, whatever, and to play it on PlayStation. I wanted it to feel like Bloodborne.
Yeah.
Even though I have Game Pass, I was like, I want to get in this early. I want it to feel like Bloodborne, and like, even still, I could have played it on Game Pass, and I'm like, I think I got my money's worth, man. Like, it's this game's so much fun, and this is after like I was like addicted to Starfield. Like, I didn't want to stop playing Starfield, and I was like, oh man, Liza P's coming out. I was like, dude, I was like, maybe I'll just skip it and get it for Black Friday or whatever and keep playing Starfield. I was like, no, dude. I started to see what people are saying about it. They were like, this literally feels like Bloodborne. Like, this feels so good. Specifically, everybody has said, and I've experienced this as well. I've only beaten like 5 of the main bosses, I think.
Yeah.
So probably only like a third of the game. But the bosses is like where these type of imitation games of From Software, like Dark Souls and Bloodborne games, where they live or die. And a lot of them, it's like, you guys tried, you know, with the boss design, because it's a little bit
Yeah.
wonky. Like, From Software is known for having just fantastically difficult bosses that at the end of the day, if you put enough time and effort into it, you can just destroy, eviscerate. You can parry every move that they do or whatever, you know, as difficult as they are, because you can get in that rhythm and in that timing and understand what their patterns are, what their tells are. And they have nailed that. Like,
Yeah.
these bosses are so difficult, but so satisfying when you get them down. And the design of them, like from an art direction standpoint, fantastic. The design of the whole game from an art direction standpoint is fantastic. It's like early 1800s, I would think, like France, with like a World's Fair, or like maybe like a dash of BioShock Infinite type of feel to it, like a little bit of like Order 1886, Nikola Tesla type of vibe. Like, it's going into that a little bit more than like the the Dracula, Transylvania, Lovecraftian, like Bloodborne thing. So it's like it's just enough doing its own thing that it feels refreshing. And it's also like chronologically in a time period that's set after Bloodborne. So
Yeah.
it just feels like it's just like we're back. It's been like 50 years in terms of like, civilization like on Earth time, even if this world isn't actually real or whatever, it feels like they're paying a lot of homage and being authentic to Carlo Collodi's novel. Which I haven't actually read the original Pinocchio, but I have read like the Nutcracker, and like compared to like the ballet, like the Nutcracker is like really dark. Apparently that's like the way that this book is compared to like the Disney version of Pinocchio. Like it's actually like really dark. So
Yeah.
they've drawn on that. Like they're chewing scenery, man, with like Geppetto, talking about like how, you're precious to him, but he's got to send you out and do these, dangerous things to like save humanity or whatever. But he's like, always be a good boy and never lie, but you have to lie or else like you can't progress in the game sometimes. It's so good, man. Oh man, I've been enjoying. I know we got to move on, but yes, they knocked it out of the park. They absolutely have nailed what they're going for here and the games that they're trying to imitate, and it also manages to feel like something fresh and new. This game will be in the conversation for one of the best games of the year, or I will have to eat my socks or something.
You never know, man. That'd be wild to see because it's that. So that's that. I'll put that. I'll put that on kind of the radar right now. Like for me, my game of the year right now so far is Starfield, and I'm saying that I'm holding out reservations for Super Mario Wonder because I'm just a huge Mario Wonder fan. But let's talk about Starfield because that is this interesting conversation that I feel is going to be going on for a long time. I think what's
Dude, Starfield
interesting,
rocks.
dude. I love
Starfield
it.
is awesome.
It is so good.
Oh my god.
And we're going to bring up Cyberpunk 2077 because it's also very interesting where I feel like this has been the most polished Bethesda game launch that I've ever had the experience of enjoying, but I've run into some bugs, but all the bugs that I ever get in Starfield just make me laugh. They're not my saves don't get deleted. Like I'm not losing progress. It's just like, okay, well, some random person decided to walk up and just stand in the frame staring awkwardly while I'm having like a serious conversation with somebody. And I'm just like, all right, that's I just appreciate it. So I've been enjoying it immensely. Now I have not finished it. I haven't New Game Plused it yet. One of the things that anybody who's been following my content for any period of time will know, life finds a way to really keep me busy from time to time. But I love that they added Starfield finally into GeForce Now. I've been streaming it for on my G Cloud Logitech G Cloud handheld, which is like it's such a game changer and saver for me because I can sit down. At the end of the day, I don't have to like go into the office. And have kids just jump and interrupt. What do you think about Starfield?
Man, I have been enjoying the absolute heck out of it. This game is just for the people that want to go back to a Bethesda world. This game probably reminds me the most of like Elder Scrolls Oblivion. For the people that love that type of experience and want to go back to something like that, I don't think that this is necessarily scratching as much of the space itch that they may have marketed it as. Like No Man's Sky is still going to do what No Man's Sky does, and I don't think that Starfield is as much as people might have expected sort of trampling on that territory. But for people that want to have that sort of narrative Bethesda RPG experience, this is just hitting all those buttons. It absolutely is. It is just a wacky time. Like, for instance, I landed in New Atlantis and I met Constellation, and I was like, these guys look like a bunch of losers. Like, I don't give a dang about these guys. Like, whatever, like the nerds and the rich guy and like whatever. And something about, it's Sarah Morgan, right? Something about her. I was like, she just comes off like rigid. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to walk outside and just the first thing that happens, I'm just going to do it, which is just like, I was like, is this game going to do the Oblivion thing? Because I want it to. I really do. And sure enough, man, I run into this guy and he's like, yeah, man, there's this tree and it's putting out some weird readings, man, and it's gonna be like bad for the whole city. I've got like this scientific theory. His name is like Dr. Kelton Frush. And like sure enough, I go on this wild goose chase to get like this other tree branch that's like light years away over in Aquila City. And then I have to like stop a bank robbery when I get there.
Yeah.
And then, and then that's a detour. And then I, end up using because I spec'd entirely. I was like, I'm going to play this game like the Forgotten City or like the Council or like other games where it's very much about like how you interact with characters in the game and in your conversational skills, your diplomacy and your persuasion and your powers of deduction and etc. I was like, that's how I'm going to play this game, because I sort of predicted, and this is sort of super subjective in terms of like how it actually turned out, but I predicted that this game in terms of the space exploration was not necessarily going to be everything that like they sort of marketed it to be. Yeah. So I was like, you know what? I'm not even going to worry about that. I'm going to go in expecting to experience like a narrative Bethesda adventure that is about meeting various people and talking my way out of situations. And very like, again, I think that this game is most similar to Oblivion. It feels like very fetch questy, very like, yes, I need to talk to the Chancellor and convince him to, whatever. Or, I've now gotten on the bad side of the Dark Brotherhood, but maybe I can, back channel with so and so. It's very like, it's almost like Game of Thronesy kind of. I love that stuff.
Yeah.
So like I just like walk in the museum that has like this stick, that I need, and I'm like, hey, I need your stick. And she's like, why would I give you the stick? It's like a prized possession of this museum, and I'm the curator of this museum. I would never give you this stick. And I'm like, oh, really? I was like, let's start the persuasion minigame. You really want to give me this stick? Like, really? I'll bring it right back. Like, it's not, and there's lives at stake. And she's like, oh man, well if it's that serious, So
random person who just walked in.
Yeah. So I go take the stick back, and like I finished that quest, and he's like, you've done the city a service. And I was like, dude, this is absolutely just the wacky dumb stuff that I was looking for out of this game. And then immediately after that, I like applied for a job at a kiosk for Ryujin Industries, which is in Neon, which is like, we're gonna get into it, but is like the cyberpunk type of style city. And holy crap, just full disclosure, I have not played a minute of Cyberpunk yet. I have been waiting. I have been waiting because, I was expecting exactly something like this, where I was going to get to experience a game that is a 10 out of 10, 11 out of 10 quality. I didn't want to taint my experience with, the at-launch woes that people said they were experiencing. This game is on next gen, and it's going to have the complete systems overhaul. I'm so excited.
Yeah.
But a lot of people said,
for anybody who's just wondering what that day is, that's coming up for a free 2.0 update for Cyberpunk. That is dropping here in just a couple of days ahead of the Phantom Liberty.
I think it's the 27th.
The Phantom Liberty is the 27th. The 2.0 update, I believe, is 21st. But while you weigh in on it, I'm going to double check that I'm giving out good information.
Okay. I'm not sure. I thought it was the 27th and the 29th, but I could be wrong. Probably am wrong. But a lot of people complained that like they marketed a lot with like the intros.
The 21st.
Okay. They marketed a lot like with the intro backstories or whatever. Like you choose like that you were like a Mad Max origin, or I'm trying to think of what the other ones were. There's like a Mad Max one. There was like a street rat or something, I think. And then there was like the corporate like executive or whatever. Yeah. And like that like lasts like all of a day. And it's like, oh, you got fired or whatever. You got extorted. Mm-hmm. Now the adventure starts or whatever. And people are like, no, like I wanted to like experience this world of like corporate, backroom dealings and sabotage and stuff. This game, Starfield, holy crap. This game delivers on that. Like I saw somebody commented on Twitter. They were like, I feel like the entirety of this quest line is just V's backstory from before Cyberpunk starts, if you choose that sort of backstory intro. Because I am an operative in this game for this, arms dealer tech company. I am,
See, I'm a space cowboy ranger cop.
See, and like you can do such different things. I am like the enforcer, baby. Like they send me in. I'm like, threatening them like, oh, well, if you really want to go through with this deal with our competitor, we can't really ensure your family's safety, or, or like whatever. Or, I'm like, hacking into their server mainframe or whatever to like sabotage their R&D project so that they can't get their launch of their tech out in time to compete with us. I mean, it's crazy, dude. It's absolutely crazy. Like I've gone from like low level, entry level hire, that's like doing literal coffee runs to like now I'm like second only to the CEO because I backstabbed the former CEO. Another thing about this game is like in like Oblivion and Skyrim, like when you make like a decision, especially when you like get violent, I guess, and let's say take out a particular character, it'll just come up with like the quest log and it'll be like, so and so is now dead. I will have to like pursue the leads on the whatever on my own, or like whatever, like it doesn't. It's just kind of like, okay, skipping to the next part of the quest line. With this one, I figured out like homegirl that hired me, she was gonna get absolutely framed and backstabbed by this person that was vying for. They wanted to basically do a coup and take over the CEO's position of the company and run the company, but they needed a pawn to do that. And so like homegirl best friend that was like my handler, she was going to make her take the fall for that. And so I was like, nah. And so like I went and found homegirl who was on the run, and she had like evidence of, the fact that she was being framed. So I get the evidence in hand and I go confront the other person. I was like, yo, I got the evidence. You need to like, turn yourself into the company and like, resign. Because like it's not going down like that. Like I'm not letting you frame homegirl. And, she was like, yeah, fat chance. Like, who are they going to believe? Like you or me? Like, and I was like, okay, well, in that case, I'm just going to axe murder you in your office. So literally, like, one of the options was, I usually just, persuade or whatever, but one of the options was, like, attack. And I was like, because I figured out that, like, her outfit is, like, really, really good for, like, the manipulation skill. So I was like, you know what? Let's throw down in your office right now, because she, like, sealed the doors. I was like, I, like, walked in and accused her. I was like, hey, I know that like you're absolutely like sabotaging the entire company to try and take over. He's like, all right, let me do the pressure sealed locks on my office door while we have this conversation. I was like, well, if you're going to do that, I might as well axe murder you. And so I just I brutally murder her in her office, and like I walk out and like expecting like sort of that like old Bethesda thing of like, it being like, oh, we'll just skip you ahead to this part in the quest now. This character, like, there is an avenue for you to take the violent path. We're going to skip you ahead to that character not being involved anymore. No, her secretary, like, came running. She's like, what have you done? Like, like the head of security was like, you better have a good explanation for that. Like, there was like dialogue and stuff in response to me, like, doing this, like, very rash, brutal thing. And they were like, like you better start explaining yourself, or like we're literally gonna like put you down, or like what, or you're gonna get fired, or we're gonna like kill you, or whatever. I didn't know what the consequences were gonna be. Yeah, or like the
worst outcome is you got fired. I lost my job today. I killed my boss.
And I was like, here's the drive with all the evidence that like they were literally destroying the entire company, and they were like, they're like, all right, we're gonna have to verify this, or like whatever. But like there was this whole like 10-minute response to me choosing to brutally axe murder this person in their office. And I was like, that is so cool that the game like reacts in that way. It didn't feel like stilted and sort of rigid in terms of like, that person's gone now, I don't like you anymore, or like whatever. No, it was like very much like, you just murdered her, like what's going on, like. And so I think that the game has like evolved in terms of like, this very much like choose your own adventure RPG to actually bear out consequences of what you're doing. Sure, are you gonna eventually get back to that golden path? The same sort of outcomes are gonna result from that. And does the quest line lead to a certain ultimate decision between like certain outcomes of like this or that type of deal, or maybe there's like a third branch? Yes. But like the amount of time that you can sort of spend in that nuance and that variance based on you making certain decisions, you can go on sort of a whole type of foray where you axe murder one of your corporate rivals in their office, and that like sort of brings you down a whole dialogue tree and stuff, and like that's super cool, man.
Yeah.
Like I love that. So I'm absolutely loving this game for that aspect, for the dialogue and the character interactions. I haven't played Baldur's Gate 3. People are saying that Baldur's Gate 3
is
like
great.
puts this game to shame. But like whatever, okay. Like that's like the
combat.
worst.
That's why Starfield beats it for me is Baldur's Gate for me is because I like the combat, I like the shooting aspect of it, but I also like turn-based combat. Now, I think Baldur's Gate 3 will take game of the year, or at least if nothing else, it should. But my personal one is still like Starfield because like you said, like it's just been such a fun experience, and going off and also when same thing with Baldur's Gate 3 though, like when talking with other people, it's like, oh, you didn't get the dog or you didn't get the owlbear, like it's like, oh, interesting, I have that, I did this and I went this way and I ran into that and I fought this boss spider that ended up giving me this cool piece of gear, but then my wizard decided he wanted to eat that because he eats gear, and I'm like, all right, I don't know why that is, it's just like it is a very impressive thing, and especially for the CRPG, I'd love to see that take the top spot over Zelda, over I haven't played Liza P, but it's that that's where that
Liza P is not going to win. I think it getting nominated is a win in and of itself.
Just to have that level.
I think it should be nominated. Yeah, I mean, Stray was nominated last year. If Liza P doesn't get a nomination, I'm going to be pissed. This game is awesome.
But yeah,
I'm going to be in your DMs, man. You got to tell me when you end up getting hired by Ryujin Industries, and you got to tell me what happens with your whole your corporate story. Yeah,
I don't know
man.
If that's gonna happen on like this playthrough, but I know like as I like not just that with the mod support, like Mysterio was talking about like how wishing that this game would come to PlayStation so that she could play it, and I would love to see Starfield come to more places, and especially
it's on cloud. It's on cloud.
Sony turned off that ability. It used to work. They cut.
Well, yeah, but
their console.
You can play it on your phone.
Yeah.
You play it on your phone. If you little known fact actually, a lot of people are like, oh man, I have an old Xbox One. Sucks that I can't play Starfield. You actually can. You can play it with Game Pass over the cloud on your Xbox One console. It's going to depend on your internet, but let's say for some reason like you had fiber, which not a lot of people do, but let's say that you had fiber. Let's say that you have really, really good internet. It's basically like you're just playing Starfield on the Xbox Series X, but on your Xbox One, which is crazy. Yeah. So depending on your internet speed, you can absolutely play Starfield on the Xbox One. Not a lot of people know that, but a very cool, option there for people that do not have the next gen consoles.
Yeah, and if PlayStation would open it up, like I would, even if we don't talk about like horse trading video games, but just the ability to like open up the PlayStation 5 cloud, which is that Sony's going to be testing that out really soon. And I'm really all for that. I'm really excited about just having more accessibility into my games. Just makes it easy. Because like I said, that Starfield's on GeForce Now, Cyberpunk's on GeForce Now. Like it makes it so that I don't have to like make time to go sit at my gaming PC to have that level of an experience, because I can play it on the handheld, or I can stream it to Xbox, which is great because it's like, oh yeah, cloud runs it like runs great. It runs fantastic. But what will be really interesting to see is like, because you have this and you've been waiting to step into Cyberpunk, and we said the 2.0 update. Neon is, I've seen people make that connection with Starfield and Neon, but when you step into Cyberpunk, one of the things you will feel pretty like heavily when it versus something like Starfield is traveling and getting around. Obviously, Cyberpunk's focusing in on Night City and the surrounding area. Starfield is a galaxy of planets and etc. So there's like, there's a clear contrast between the two. But when you go and you're not hitting loading screen or going through a door and it's loading you into things, like it's easy that you can get really immersed really quickly into Cyberpunk 2077. And the question then is since you obviously have it ready to rock and roll behind you for the podcast, but when you step into this game, like, do you feel that it's been the right, like, do you feel like you might regret not having played it when it was broken and when there were issues, to have that as just a contrast, or are you going to be happy?
Not at all. What? I mean, even do you hear yourself? Like, you're not making that sound appealing at all.
I love that stuff. Like, I like being like, I remember when it was this, and that's just because again,
No.
look at my gaming history with Final Fantasy 1.0, 14 1.0, and like I remember when things were just the worst, and it's to have that easily clearer picture of
Well,
like
I
what's all
think there's
changed.
a difference between, so like look at something like maybe Dead by Daylight.
Okay, yeah,
There are a juggernaut now in terms of the horror games genre with the licenses that they've been able to acquire. I mean, they literally just got Alien and Ellen Ripley. Like, come on, Nick Cage. I mean, this game is like doing gangbusters in terms of what it's able to bring into the video game fold in terms of the horror genre and outside the horror genre with Nicolas Cage. Um, and they're just gonna keep expanding, keep killing it. But like that game very much started off with like four, generic, what's the word, unlicensed characters, two or three unlicensed, just devs made them killers.
yeah,
One that was basically like a Jason ripoff. That's how that game started, and it was fun. Like it was fun for what it was. It certainly had its own problems, but in terms of what they said they were going to set out to do and what the product that they delivered actually was, like it was a double A middling success. Like people
yeah.
enjoyed it, and it's sort of grown into this sort of like metric, ton of commercial and even critical success at this point. IGN re-reviewed the game in 2021, I think, and gave it like an 8 or a 9.
Yeah.
And just the fact that IGN would feel the need to re-review it, tells you everything that you need to know, basically. So something like that, I think that there is like a level of nostalgia and a level of appreciation there of like, I was there on the ground floor.
Yeah.
Like I was there for when this was smaller. But again, it's just a success story all the way through of here's a smaller developer. They made a game. It was small. It did what it was meant to do in the first place. And then it grew into this whole other thing entirely. That is a very wholesome experience for people that were like, I was there in year one. For something like Cyberpunk, they said it was going to be what it was going to be, and it wasn't.
And it wasn't. Yeah.
And the same thing for like No Man's Sky. It's like, it's not enjoyable to be there in the beginning when the thing, like if you're there for Among Us, or if you're there for Fall Guys, or if you're there for, I'm struggling for like a better example, but if you're there for like a smaller thing, and then that ends up blowing up into this whole thing entirely, maybe like Rainbow Six Siege, I guess. But if you're there,
just continue to put in work.
if you're there for something that ends up, taking on a whole, it becomes a whole new animal. But that was, it hit its expectations in the beginning and in the onset. I think that's a whole different experience than when something overpromises and then absolutely, bafflingly underdelivers or drastically underdelivers. And I think that that's what Cyberpunk did. I mean, there were a lot of people that were viscerally upset, and it completely turned me off to playing the game. I was like, no, I'm not touching this. And I was like, but also I was like, I trust CD Projekt Red. Yeah. I know based on, the quality project that The Witcher 3 is and their consumer-friendly practices, their consistently consumer-friendly practices that they've had, over the last more than a decade. I know that they're going to make this right, and I know that they're going to have a quality product at some point. And the fact that it wasn't next gen as well, like I just bought a Series X, and then when I heard, oh, there's a Series X version coming, I was like, that's all I need to hear. Yeah. I'm gonna wait for the Series X version. Series X version comes out, and then I was like, do I jump in and play this? And they were like, well, we got DLC coming next year, and I was like, that's when.
There you go. Yeah,
that's when. I'm gonna let this thing.
This
thing sit in the crock pot. It's gonna taste so good.
Are you gonna play the 2.0 update on the 21st before the expansion drops for Phantom Liberty?
That's in 3 days.
Yeah.
That would be the only reason why not, is that it's in 3 days. This game is just a time thing. If I had unlimited time, I would jump right in. I would have liked to do a video that's like a Cyberpunk review, like not Phantom Liberty. That's just like Cyberpunk review.
You've already bought the game. You got burned. You didn't like it. You were like, screw it, I'm gonna install.
From my perspective though, of like I have no prior experience, nothing. I'm
Right.
just going into the game. Because there's not a lot of people out there. I mean, I guess there are a lot of people like in terms of a logistical demographic standpoint, right? But like that would be a particular perspective of like somebody that has never played Cyberpunk, going in and being like, this is what this game is. This is a review of the game. So I would have liked to have done that. With that being in 3 days, I don't think that's gonna happen. Maybe I'll do
Okay.
like a complete 180 and just be like, yeah, let's do it. Like, come
Let's
on.
install. Let's go.
But yeah, yeah, I just this is not a great time for. And
Yeah.
like I said, I want to jump in the first Descendant. That
Mhm.
limited time beta is happening through the weekend.
The
So
also like if Throne and Liberty is having a closed NDA beta at the same time, you know, so it's like lots of stuff going on that is just like whew. Uh,
And I think with this being a DLC and with the main game being like an overhaul of a game that already exists, I mean, like if you were gonna, I mean, just talking like realistically here, if you were gonna make Starfield content, there would probably be more people that would care about that, and it would be relevant for more people. More people would want to consume that
mhm.
probably than Cyberpunk. Is it 2.0 at this? I would almost say it's 3.0 with having had the next gen release,
Yeah,
but with the
point.
Cyberpunk overhaul, we can say um, I think more people are going to care about Starfield still at this point because of the mammoth that it is. Yeah, we need 48-hour days, Mistress says, for all the good video games that are out now.
100%.
Tell me about it, dude. I want to get to the end of Liza P.
Yeah.
I want to see like they're nailing it with the gameplay and the combat. What about the story, man? Like
Yeah.
I want to see if they nail this in terms of like, do I walk away from this being like, dude, that was dope. Like I had
Yeah.
a great story narrative experience with this as well. It's the full package. Yeah, man, there's just too many good games out right. I think I want to keep playing Starfield. And
Mhm.
also the thing is like I've really enjoyed the cyberpunk aspects of Starfield so
Yeah.
much.
So many
Honestly,
different themes. Like
this
there's
this
like
is
it's so
like
many different things to
this is like
experience.
the year and the season of don't ruin my game. Like like everybody has been like, "Oh man, I played Baldur's Gate 3 and like now it's ruining like Starfield and other RPGs for me." And I'm like, "God, like don't put that on the back of the box. Like that's like
Yeah.
the worst marketing shtick you could possibly like all of my friends are like, "Man, Baldur's Gate 3 ruined Starfield for me, man," or Baldur's Gate 3 ruined, some other game for me. Like I just
Yeah.
don't look at games the same way anymore. And I'm like, well, dang, I'm not gonna play it for a while then because I really want to enjoy these other games. It's like talk about the worst hook for a game to say that it ruins all other games. So same thing with Cyberpunk, man. Like I don't ruin my Starfield, basically. Like like I don't know. I have the games that I'm enjoying now. It seems like now more than ever, it's like with these games sort of butting up against each other, you can go from one to the other and be like, oh man, now I'm looking at this other game differently. I mean, look at like, I mean, Outer Worlds now? Like Outer Worlds, really good game. Now it's like, why would I ever play Outer Worlds, man? Like Starfield exists. I mean,
Mhm.
we're in the era of like, better play your games before the next game comes out, or it's going to be a completely different
Constant
experience.
backlog expanding.
Yeah.
And that's where like things like Game Pass really do provide a lot of value over the life of these games as well, because all of a sudden, imagine here in, 2 years, 3 years, oh, you're on Game Pass. Oh, you didn't play Starfield. You were busy with all these other games. Like it's still sitting there for you. You can go and
With
not
all the
have,
mods
yeah,
and
with all the
yeah.
mods and not having to, pay extra or whatever. And so you can sit down and experience it. And so that's like one of the strengths. And that's why like with them Xbox talking about how they are investing in Redfall. Like they're going to fix that game. They're going to do these things. I hope that
It's
they
good to
they
hear.
stick. It's good to hear. It's going to be good to hear it like that gets affirmed when they actually do the action, because talk is cheap. You can always like, yeah, we're going to do this, but when it comes
Um,
down to then if they do deliver, and honestly like like there was always these red flags with the aspect of saving your like progress, and if anybody joined you then like they didn't progress or like that, like nothing was
Yeah.
happening. And it's like, but what if I want to? Like, I just want to play with my friend and I don't want to have to see her
Yeah.
like, I'm gonna play this single player now for like just let
That
people play
feels like
together.
Far
Yeah.
Cry 4. I mean, that's like so far back in terms of like quality of life offerings, in terms of like actual real life years,
Yeah.
in terms of like how games were being developed. I mean, that puts us all the way back to like 2014, 2015. So yeah, that's not ideal. I think I do want to say there's two aspects to the Redfall thing.
Hmm.
One is like the game and the gameplay and the experience that gamers are going to have, players are going to have when they log on to it, when they play it. And that, like you said, is like a very much like hold your applause, wait and see. There's no reason to give them any type of commendations yet. They
Right.
haven't done anything. Um, totally agree with that. But there's the other aspect of, we alluded to it at the top of the show. You look at EA with Immortals,
Hmm.
vastly across the board critically successful in terms of where that game was being anticipated and placed in terms of like this looks like a double A, sort of carbon copy meathead shooter or whatever. And it's like, oh shoot, like this has got like some pretty good like fantasy, RPG exploration and looting elements. Like this is really cool. Like you can make builds. Like, like people were pleasantly surprised by the game. It got a 8 from IGN, which I think, nobody was really expecting that. So like, and it did well. I think on the Open Critic, it's like pretty high now. It's in the mid to high 80s. So EA laid off people like that was their livelihood that were
Hmm.
working on that game,
Yeah.
and that's a vastly better experience than Redfall is to play right now. I mean, like it's not even close, dude. Like again, I'm talking about Immortals might be the best first person shooter of the entire year when we're all said and done to come out this year in a year that has been sparse for first person shooters, to be
Hmm.
fair. But just even the fact that it's in that conversation and that they're laying off employees. Redfall is like one of the worst first person shooters of the year. And Xbox is like, no, we're doubling down on this.
Yeah.
Yes, it's going to cost time and resources that we could allocate elsewhere. We believe that it's worth it. I just think from in terms of like, we live in a capitalist society where not every company is willing to put a lot of effort that they aren't going to be able to monetize and make lucrative into providing a better experience for consumers and for players in
Hmm.
this instance. Not a lot of companies don't want to do that. And B, uh, in terms of like their employees and the people whose livelihood is brought about by them working for the company, investing in those people and saying, we believe in you guys. We believe that you can put the work in and deliver on a better, more quality product here. Go get at it. We're going to invest in you and allow you to continue doing that work, rather than just try to cut corners and over monetize here by, eliminating some salaries that we have to pay. I
Hmm.
just want to applaud Xbox as, having the type of culture and ecosystem to be the type of company that doubles down on a Redfall rather than just, closing up shop and sending
Yeah.
everybody
Well, because
home.
Redfall is going to live on Game Pass, and so it's like because it's going to live there. Like imagine in a year's time or 2 years time or 5 years time, it's like yeah, that game like that's one of the things with Netflix. I wish that we would see them actually finish series. Like a part of the package is like yeah, it wasn't as big of a hit as maybe they wanted, but let them finish out the story because that lives on your service
Mhm.
for forever, as opposed to like you end up having, or at least now, a reputation of all these unfinished series that are just sitting out there. And if somebody started watching them, there's no real satisfaction in that conclusion. And so that's where, yeah, I applaud them for taking that approach. As we end and get ready to wrap the show, Kirk, where can people find you? And you got any final thoughts?
Um, yeah, they can find me on Twitch, twitch.tv/Kirk the Gamer. Been streaming a lot of Marvel Snap, but we were gonna pivot over to that first Descendant we were talking about at the top of the show. Check that out. See if that is deserves to be up there with the Destinies of the world, with the MMO lights of the world. If the gunplay is good, if
Yeah.
the progression loop is good, they're doing like sort of a new thing in terms of those type of MMO like games, in that they're sort of injecting the like Apex Legends type of character hero, almost like Genshin Impact maybe.
Yeah.
Of like, there's this character that has this quippy personality trait and like ability and like whatever. So it's interesting to see that in like a Destiny Anthem style game.
Yeah,
so
we need to see
I'm
what the long term is, because like hero shooter versus like this is my character kind of aspect, but you can still build out that hero in a certain way.
I want to see what that's about. So if you guys
Yeah.
want to see what that's about as well, twitch.tv/KirkTheGamer. Gonna have Twitch drops enabled to get you some currency in that game and some exclusive shaders and stuff. And then also What's New Video Games on YouTube. Got some reviews up right now for The Crew, Motorfest, and Eternites, a new JRPG. That's where to find me, guys. And obviously I'm still gonna be here on Work to Game if Brian doesn't get sick of me. So
Man, it's so much fun always getting to hang out with you and talk to you. And so this has been excellent, guys. If you need, his links are in the description of this video, this VOD, this podcast. And you can also, listen to wherever podcasts are found. So I encourage you guys to do that. You can always search Epic Loot Radio for those links. But with that, we're going to wrap up today's show. We'll be back here in 2 weeks, ready for a whole brand new,
I don't even know what we're going to be talking about in 2 weeks, to be honest. That's wild.
Weeks is a lot of stuff. We'll have
Cyberpunk,
we'll
first Descendant.
First Descendant impressions, so we could
Spider-Man's going to be coming up at that point.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be good. It's gonna be good. So stick around, guys. Hit the subscribe button and like button on your way out, and we will see you next time.
Epic Loot Radio. Epic Loot Radio.